Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world right now. Hello, welcome to Elders Wisdom with Juliet Yelverton and me, Marion Bevington. Our second names rhyme.
Marion, hi.
Yelverton and Bevington, it's a poem. I'm a poet and I know it.
You're all the way back in England again, aren't you?
I am. I've got a visitor. Let me show you. Say hello.
Oh, is that real? Is a real doggy?
No, it's a teddy. It's even got a magic tongue that comes out.
It's so cute.
This is Una. I sound like a
Really?
banshee running around Hampstead Heath. Una! Una!
Oh God, it's massive. It looks like a stuffed toy. That's so funny because I've got a video that I'm showing this week about where I am in France, and there's this cat that just came in. It's not even my cat, but it's like kind of really wanting to be in on the video. So she's in quite a lot of the clips on the video. So you're back in London, and all this crazy stuff has been going on. Has there been riots and things in London? Because I'm hearing it from a distance.
No, not that I've had any witness to. There seems a little bit of a raised activity in sirens and things, but nothing majorly different to how it was before I left. And it was funny because when I got back, I had these visions of like riots and anarchy in the streets, and not knowing how I was going to be met, what I was going to be met with when I got off the train at Liverpool Street. And it was midnight on a Friday night, so it was like disco central. And there were a
Yeah.
lot of drunk people around, and I had my white stick and it was dark and my sunglasses on. So a lot of people wanted to help me, and it was great because I just had this really lovely little sort of safe accompanying journey to the bus stop, and they made sure I got on the right bus, and everybody was really happy to help me. It was lovely.
So people are kind generally.
Yeah.
Nobody was crazy.
No. And because of my vulnerability, I'm attracting a totally different type of attention, which is really nice.
Yeah. There is the replay. Everybody were watching the replay, and we're on Rumble, Twitter, all sorts of places. So because we got some really important stuff to share this week. So you're telling me people were kind to you in London, but the media's putting out that it's really dangerous in England, and there are Islamic extremists running around with hammers and just like trying to kill people, and that
Yes.
loads and batshit bonkers. What's her name?
Katie Hop.
Yeah. She's done a video saying that lots of people have been, quite a few people have been really badly injured in different incidents this week.
There has been rioting in cities, but it's not the scale that people assume it is. It's not the narrative that people assume it is either. It's got a very different sense behind it. So there's this talk this week of the two-tier policing system, and Elon Musk is pulling Keir Starmer up on his two-tier policing system.
Is he? What's he saying?
Well, it's like there's one rule for one set of people and one rule for the others, and so the left wing and the right wing get treated completely differently. So you're allowed to do satanic paedophilia on the streets if you're left wing, but you're not allowed to say enough is enough if you considered right wing.
Really? So he's like standing up against this right wing, left wing nonsense.
But that's the reality of it. I mean, I'm not quite sure what Elon said. That's my interpretation of all of this. People have to recognise that I don't see enough or hear clearly enough to be able to completely quote other people. It's always peppered with some of my opinions, and that's.
Well, in reality, everything we ever say is kind of peppered with our opinions, really. So it's quite interesting because what I am seeing is like outrage by many people about Keir Starmer's on the back of apparent riots, that he's coming on with a really strong thing about we will not tolerate any attacks on this or that or whatever. I won't say the words, but anyone listening to Keir Starmer will know what the words are. And like what I've heard is that people who have been standing up against being certain issues are now being attacked and called right-wing extremist. And these people that are standing up and saying enough is enough.
Yeah.
You know, one's a vicar, one's a, you know, a teacher and whatever. And it's like this term right-wing extremist. It's like, what's that about? I mean, it's been slung at us so many times, isn't it? It's like conspiracy, right-wing extremist. You know,
Yeah.
why?
Well, to belittle and humiliate, and to the main thing is division, isn't it? How to divide the community.
Yeah.
It's all about division.
So that's what.
Because in the division we don't stand in power. But it's really difficult, isn't it? Because when people start to create communities, you can't even decide on a fucking name. Regardless of everybody having sort of high level values that are equal, and we're all, you know, we think equally about certain things. When you start trying to organize and get people together, they all want to have their own way, and so then there's division again. So this idea of humanity unifying and standing in our power to be able to just be an unmovable force is completely smashed when any bit of division comes in, because then there's chinks in the armor.
Well, that's the tactic all the time, isn't it? To divide people, and then we're really vulnerable. It's like we think the enemy is that person over there, the Christian, the Muslim, the homosexual, the white extreme, you know, supremacist or whatever. These are titles being put on people, but then we turn inwards and fight against each other, when in fact the threat is coming from outside of us.
People who are creating the names of the threat.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of these things on Twitter that I read was so it was actually a guy that obviously he was Indian or something. He's obviously second generation, and he said the term far right is a cheap buzzword that dehumanizes people with genuine concerns rather than solve the problem. It radicalizes individuals to commit insane, reprehensible acts of criminality. Let's condemn the violence and address the grievances.
Yeah.
We can do both.
They're not addressing any grievances. They just go, more rules, more rules, more rules. Don't matter what shit there is, get on with it and just obey our rules. You don't obey our rules, you go inside for 5 years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And John O'Looney also did a clip, and he talked about the creating civil unrest deliberately.
Yeah. Well, they've been waiting since 2020, haven't they? Because they assumed that they'd be able to do it then, but we quite liked our lock-in, so we got on with that. But yeah, they've kind of been waiting for the unrest because that's what they need to step up the military intervention, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I've got a video I wanted to share, which brief intro. This is a video that I have taken about where I am in France, which is talking about generational trauma, what happened here in France in the Second World War, how it's impacted the community here, and how people have actually got over, have gone through a deep healing process, and how my life here in the hamlet also was affected by that. So I'm going to run this.
Hi, how are you all? How is everyone today? How are you in these crazy times? I have just had... Come on, Puss. Where's the cat just coming to see me? Hello. I have just had the craziest time. Hello, Pussycat. Well, meet the Pussycat Part 2. I've just had the craziest time. I just made a whole video as part of the Elders Wisdom show, and spent a long time making it. I spent ages and ages thinking about it yesterday and today and so on, because today, because it's a very special thing happening here at the moment. And then I had incredible problems with transmitting the video over to my laptop and so on, and my phone ran out of space, and all sorts of really, really weird things went on. And then I went really, really dizzy. I don't know why, what all that was about. Anyway, I was talking about the energy of trauma in the video and healing the energy of trauma. So, so this is part 2. This is take 2. So the last thing I'd said at the end of the video was the need for perseverance in healing, and that you never, never give up. So, you know, I don't know if it was my technical incompetence, the limitations of my phone, or whether there's some kind of dark forces going on, because, you know, it's really clear at the moment that there's a lot of really evil stuff going on the planet, as we've witnessed. We talked about on the Elders' Wisdom last week with the Olympics and all the ceremonies and so on. So I really don't know. Gosh, as I'm recording, I'm suddenly smelling a beautiful, beautiful perfume from the silk tree that grows here. So I was really disappointed to lose all those, you know, like 7-8 minutes of video footage that I just created for you. So let's start again. Okay? Breath. So where did I start? Yeah. So this video is about three things. Three things I'm going to talk about. It's first of all, it's in remembrance to the Nazi massacre that happened in the village here in the south of France 60 years ago. It's about teaching about the energy of traumatic recapitulation, and it's about understanding the infinite power of nature and its incredible magnificence, how we can always rely upon that power of nature. And it's about the creative ability of the human soul, that we can use that power to transform and restore ourselves back to our connection with God. So that's really important to remember that things aren't lost, you know, even if it feels like it's lost. So yeah, let's start by talking about the Nazi massacre. So today's a really, really special day. Or it's building up to a special day, and I'm just wondering if it's the energy of all that that's kind of affecting what I'm doing. It's that the 6th of August is the day actually, and it was the day in 1944 when a terrible thing happened in this village, in this little hamlet, where people were, terrible, terrible things happened at the hands of the Nazis. And I moved here to the hamlet in 93, which was, what's that, 93, 50 years, almost 50 years after this thing that had happened. And I was so shocked. I didn't discover about it for years actually, but we had a incredibly difficult time when we first moved here. And it was, the whole hamlet was ruined. There was nobody here. I moved in with 3 small children, 2 babies and a small child. And we had 8 years of being attacked, because that energy of fascism was still, that traumatic imprint was still very much here in the valley. And things happened that were very, very difficult at that time. I talk about them in my autobiography, volume 5, I'm going to come to, and in the healing book that I've done, talking about what happened. So it took years and years of really focused hard work to turn things around here and for it to be a different place. And it is a totally different place now. So let's talk about, let's talk about what happened up in the village. So in 1940, France was at war with the Nazis, and the Nazis had invaded France, and they had to make a decision as to what they were going to do, and the country was split. So some people went with wanting to be sovereign, and a large part of the country signed up to becoming a government collaborating with the Nazis. That was called the Vichy regime. And So this part of France, in the south of France, was collaborating with the Nazis. So people, the local people that didn't want that, they really kind of rallied round, and I mean, it was brutal under the Nazis. It's the same Nazi energy as we're dealing with now in various places in the world, and funded by the same globalist. Actually, the same globalists that funded the Nazis then are still funding things that we're fighting against now. So in the woods around here, the local people formed a resistance movement and hid out in the woods, and they were called the Maquis. And on this particular day, the Maquis decided to release prisoners from the prison of war camp. There were Ukrainians and Russians and so on that were our allies, that were being captured by the Nazis in the prison of war camp. And they went up and they released them. And then something terrible happened. So when the Nazis heard about this, and then they decided to retaliate. So what happened on this particular Sunday, 1944, the 6th of August, the old people were in the cafe having their coffee, Sunday morning, doing the usual things. And then suddenly they got wind of the fact that there was Nazis were turning up in the village. Now this story was told me by an old man up in the village that actually escaped that day because he ran down to my house, which is about a mile down the road. There wasn't a road then, there was just a pathway. So he escaped and ran down and hid on the roof here. Do you want to go down, Puss? You want to go down? She's a bit fidgety. So go down then. So he ran down here and hid, because I think actually the resistance were using this house as a hiding place anyway, and now she wants to come back up. So so the people in the cafe, they heard that the Nazis, they heard them marching on the village, and they rushed out, and there were 2 battalions of Nazis coming into the village 2 directions in a kind of pincer movement, and as the men ran out, that they were shot down by the Nazis, including Casimir, Monsieur Casimir Struck, who's the father of the man that we bought the house from, Monsieur Struck, we bought the house from. So then it didn't end there. The Nazis then rounded everybody up into the small hotel there. I guess that was where the cafe was as well, and boarded them in and set the place on fire, which was absolutely horrific. So a lot of people were burnt to death on that day. And I mean it's so awful and so traumatic, it hardly bears thinking about. And there's a memorial up in the village talking about it, which a picture of which is included in this video. So I will talk, I've got a little video, I will show you that place, and the video of the men that are up in the village yesterday singing on this commemoration and celebration. were singing about what's happening, and they were singing in Occitan, and they're singing about the path of liberty and freedom and the people that died that day, the people who were burnt alive, singing in Occitan, "We are walking the path to freedom." And they were sharing in that song about how much they love France and the country, and how much they would resist, and how they perished for their love, but they had to do this for freedom. So that in itself is a huge lesson for us, because we are dealing with some pretty evil stuff going on at the moment, and unless we stand up and push back, all our freedoms will be lost. And also, what a waste of all those people, all those people before who stood up against fascism and evil. We can't just lie down and be walked over at this point. We have to follow their example and stand up, even if it's hard and it's like we're worn out and it's like we don't have it within us to do it again. We have to persevere. We have to keep going somehow. So that's that part. So the part I want to talk about now is about traumatic recapitulation. So Peter Levine, who's a pioneer in trauma healing, he says that traumatic recapitulation is the fundamental thing on this planet that causes terrible violence and wars to happen time after time. It's like there is an energy in a traumatic event like that fire happening. There's a tremendous energy that becomes imprinted. So when it's with an individual, that imprint happens in the body. When it's with, like, on a planetary level, the imprint is of the energies that are imprinted planetarily somehow in the body of the Earth or something. Nobody really understands what happens, but it does happen that time after time, as long as that traumatic imprint is there and we are unconscious about it, then it will come up time after time after time. And so this is what I talk about in my trauma healing book, is teaching people how to do somatic experiencing, to track in the body where that imprint is held, because it could be in your arm, in your chest, in your legs, wherever. And you can access into that point and work with it somatically to clear it from the body. And that's the trauma healing work that I do as well. So the energy of the traumatic imprint that happened here, it's the energy somehow of fire, and that has been recapitulated. So since that burning in the village, in this house, in the particular house that I bought here, strangely, there has been 3 more fires. And I came into this place and had to deal with, not just me, my partner and my family. We went through incredible difficulties of attack and abuse by the fascist mayor and the police here at that time, but also the house itself, the body, if you like, of this hamlet. The house itself had undergone 3 fires, and we had to deal somehow with restoring the house back to its initial goodness and well-being and health. And I'm still in the process of that, because things are still ongoing. There's incredible challenges happening for each one of us on this planet, and we have to persevere and keep going if we want to bring goodness, truth and beauty and harmony back to the planet. We can't give up at this point. We have to keep going. We have to find the reserves in ourselves to keep going, and we have to resource ourselves, because if you just empty yourself with continual effort, you don't have it in you to rebound and to deal with it again, to do it again once you've been thwarted. So I'm going to show you how fire has affected this house and what we've had to do to deal with it. So this is downstairs in the interior of my house, and we've done a lot of renovations since we first moved in here. This was a very, very dark, deep cellar, and I've been renovating and creating lots of rooms down here. This was all darkness and mud and so on. So it's involved putting in lots of floors and taking walls down. So there was a wall across this part here, and you can see this big beam. This was completely blocked off, and it was a dead space. And I was very curious about what this space was about and decided to take this wall down. Then after I took the wall down, I found a space in here which must have been an old chicken coop or something like that, but it was completely blocked in. So these two windows that you see in front of you now were sealed up with stones, and there was a wooden floor dividing the bottom part to the upper part, and I found a gun holster in there. So there was no access, no way of getting into it. So what was the room about, and what was the gun holster doing there? So I imagine that maybe that was a hiding place from the Nazis, maybe resistance people hid in there or something. But anyway, I've opened it up, and in honour of what's happening, in remembrance, I've decided to make this into a little space for meditation, which I'm calling the little chapel. And we're going to put a stained glass window in the upper part, which I hope to include a picture of in this video. Good morning Pussycat, good morning. She's come to join me for the video again. So this is the site of the first fire. It happened before we bought the house, maybe in the 1970s. And this originally, there was a barn here that you can see through here. The archway has since fallen, unfortunately. And this was another barn here. So this is what we did. We had to take down a lot of walls because this was full of rubble and beams, broken beams and so on. And we took down a lot of walls, filled it in. So this space was like that space. We filled it in and made a lovely courtyard here and planted this tree that's grown incredibly. Nature is so powerful. So this was a huge undertaking. And I don't know what the cause of that first fire was, but I was talking about the recapitulation of trauma, so we had to take down a lot of walls. And we built this courtyard, bringing the slabs from the river, the flat paving slabs from the river. It is just so amazing. Nature always is trying to reclaim everything, so the incredible power of nature. Here we have a little fig tree that's just seeded itself here since my last visit a few days ago. Not a few days ago, a few weeks ago. And here we have another pussycat. Hello. Hiding behind the chair. So, this is an example of nature. So, we have the rubble that we have yet to clear from taking this wall down here to a stable height. And all the time nature is trying to come in. It's trying to reclaim everything that mankind is doing. We have the brambles come in, so they can't come and so easily plant themselves. And then down here in the middle, we have a buddleia tree. Now the buddleia trees are, I should think, trees of hope we should call them, because they come in and they reclaim buildings and they nourish the butterflies. They're called the butterfly tree. They actually absolutely feed hundreds of different kinds of butterflies that are all attracted to them. And we see them in London after the bombing. We saw them coming out of the buildings, the ruined buildings. So together the brambles and the buddleia trees and all those first plants that come in, they start creating soil, and gradually, hello pussycat, the soil gradually becomes a surface again for things to grow in. So we have the leaves from the tree that falls down and creates the soil. So it's a huge task all the time keeping our lovely courtyard clear, unless we totally wanted to concrete it. So here's an example of the buddleia as well. So that's the first fire. Fire number 1, which happened to the barns of the house here. The barns attached immediately to the house. So we have the early morning sunshine, it's very bright. And that's looking back at the main house. The second fire happened here, and that was in 2000 and around 2005, I think. So I had to have the whole roof rebuilt. It was a raging inferno. So coming through the house we can see the second fire. So this is the main part of the house, which is the newer part. And then once we had moved in, we found that there was a very old part on this end which we renovated, and it was in a far different condition to this when we found it, but it was renovated, rebuilt, and then in 2005, after the renovation, and I was in England, it caught fire. So this is an entirely new roof that has been put on, because this roof burnt down. You can see the difference with the old beam. There are just the old beams left. You can see the new beams that were put in, and it had to be retiled. Such was the inferno that the roof dropped down, burning, and fell onto the new floor that we had put in. And here we've now renovated the floor again, but we could not get rid of the scorch marks of the fire. So this fire had happened as a result of a huge storm, and some sparks from the chimney blew into the rafters and set the whole room on fire. Luckily the fire brigade was able to come from 15 miles away in time and managed to put it out so it's not gutted like the barn, which you can see across the way there. So the message is never give up. If you have a vision and a hope that you can work on it little by little, never give up. You only have to do a small piece at a time. Each day a little piece, and just be disciplined with that and keep going and not allow yourself to be overwhelmed. So stay aligned with the light. And today there's going to be a community celebration in my clearing, which is wonderful. They're just setting up the tables now, so there's going to be music and celebration here. And this is my beautiful barn where the third fire happened started by vandals or someone in the middle of the night. Totally gutted this beautiful barn, and now the roof is being rebuilt, but it's taken me almost 20 years now, perhaps longer, to rebuild. So we've had to rebuild walls, put the roof on. It's a very, very slow process. So let's just go round the other side. It's early morning and the sun is very bright. It's the bread oven. So this is better, we can get a better view. So it was an absolutely raging inferno, and we still have a big part to do on the end. And we come inside. So it's been a huge process rebuilding this barn, but little by little, step by step, we've been doing it. And this is how the ancients did it, one stone at a time. Never give up, incredible workmanship. Come round the other side now. So after years of hard work and worrying about how I was ever going to rebuild, an incredible mess out here of the remains of the fire with all sorts of things thrown out, and this then bramble's grown up around it again. And I spent several years with help picking everything up, clearing the brambles, moving the old beds that had been thrown out in the fire, the bits and pieces, different things. And after immense amount of clearing, I finally saw this, which was my beautiful red rose. That had been planted, and it was flowering again. A real blessing. And this is the end of the barn that has still yet to be done. The walls on this side have to be stabilised, and this part of the barn is still full of rubble and the beams that we had to saw out that's dropped down inside. And you can see the incredible power of nature, how it's actually reclaiming, and this is what nature will do, and we are nature, so we will always be stronger than anything else. You see, the brambles have just started growing inside and are reclaiming the building here, so we will go in and clear them all out and clear the rubble out of this part. So that's how you have to do it, a little bit at a time, never give up, and know that the human spirit is incredible, and we are infinite beings of light that can overcome all sorts of difficulties. And we have to work together. We work together as a team, as a community, as a group, and we can build and we can reclaim and stay with our creativity, because it's that creative spark that allows us to go forward even when everything seems overwhelming and difficult and impossible. The creative spark is what keeps us going, so we can do it. Nous avons une grande fête aujourd'hui pour la célébration. Il y a, pardon, je parlais en français. We are having a grand fête here for the celebration. There's going to be about 80 people, so just a quick show round. People will park in various places in the entrances of the buildings, the fields, so it's a lot of cars coming. And ici, in the downstairs kitchen, they're preparing the food. So community working together.
Le gasoil qui a doublé, en fait, tu vois,
Lots of melons being prepared.
le gaz, et bien ça, regarde les boulangeries.
Lots of food being prepared. For the moment, this little room is being used.
C'est pas par deux, mais c'est plus de 30%. Pour nous, ouais, l'électricité.
Bonjour Richard.
Bonjour.
Vous êtes en vidéo. Voilà, j'essaie.
Ah, mais oui, bien sûr. Alors là, je suis en train de...
Je peux sauter la porte? C'est possible pour sauter?
Tu fais ce que... Moi, je fais comme si tu n'étais pas là.
D'accord. Ah, ça marche bien.
Alors, le problème, c'est voir si ça marche bien. Là, on peut fermer. Après...
Oui, c'est ça.
C'est pas tout à fait... Alors, peut-être qu'il faudrait une barre plus longue. Avec plus longue.
Oui. On peut chercher ça.
Non, mais regarde, on peut aussi faire
Mais
ça.
vous êtes en vidéo. Oui.
Voilà, peut-être ça.
So this is the clearing that's prepared for the fete this afternoon. It's going to have 80 people about.
Vous avez mis les chips déjà?
Non, il a arrêté parce qu'elles sont un peu grandes. Mais quand les gens se font placer, pendant qu'on passe le jour,
Je lui dis embrasse-moi, tout doucement je la regarde, et je lui dis embrasse-moi, comment veux-tu que je t'embrasse? Tout le monde dit mal de toi. On dit que tu vas pour l'armée, dans le Piémont servir le roi. On dit que tu vas pour l'armée, dans le Piémont servir le roi. Quand tu seras dans ces campagnes, tu n'y penseras plus à moi. Tu penseras aux Italiennes, qui sont bien plus belles que moi. Tu penseras aux Italiennes, qui sont bien plus belles que moi. Si fait la belle, j'y penserai toujours à toi. Je m'en ferai faire une image, tout à la semblance de toi. Je m'en ferai faire une image, tout à la semblance de toi. Quand je serai à table à boire, à tous mes amis je dirai, chers camarades, venez voir, celle que mon cœur a tant aimée. Chers camarades, venez voir, celle que mon cœur a tant aimée. Je l'ai aimée, je l'aime encore, je l'aimerai tant que je vivrai.
Desde que falei contigo, nunca tive mai descanso, nunca tive mai descanso. Ay, 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 ay. Río verde, río verde, río verde, tantas cores, río verde, así somos los amores. Onda dirá, el que chile, la lechuga, abrazos, no me querer, la vida, onda dirá, la querida, onda dirá, río verde, río verde, río verde, tantas cores, río verde, así somos los amores. El macho de verde, onda una río verde, tantas cores, río verde, onda una así somos los Once for sorrow, twice for joy, thrice for a girl and fourth for a boy, five for silver, six for gold, seven's for a secret never told. Devil, devil, hide it, hide it. Devil, devil, hide it, hide it. Devil, devil, hide it, hide it. Oh, the mudbug brings us studying of news both fair and full. She's more cunning than the raven, more wise than any hole. For she brings us news of the harvest, of the barley, wheat and corn, and she knows when we'll go to our graves and how we shall be born. Once for sorrow, twice for joy, thrice for a girl and fourth for a boy, five for silver, six for gold, seven's for a secret never told. Devil, devil, hide it, hide it. Devil, devil, hide it, hide it. Devil, devil, hide it, hide it. She brings us news when she comes from right. refrain from the left, and all the news that's in the air, we know to trust her best. For she sees us at her level, and she mocks us at her words, and she still the eggs from out of the nest, and she can mop the hole. Once for sorrow, two's for joy, three's for a girl, and four's for a boy, five for silver, six for gold, seven's for a secret never told.
I hope you found that was interesting. So this is the day after, and I just found this lovely flower on the grass dropped by the people who were celebrating here in my clearing where I'm sitting now yesterday, the community fete, special community event that happened. And just a quick sharing, I was so emotional yesterday. I had such feelings of gratitude and happiness and pride for what's happened here, because it's actually it's 80 years since the massacre in the village, and I bought this house in 93 and was here until 2000, when the level of abuse that was happening against us as a family was so overwhelming that then I was forced to leave. But I never wanted to let go of the house, and it was all turning back into ruins, and there was no community here at all, apart from the one neighbour that then had moved in. So I have held on to this house and held on to working here, coming backwards and forwards from England this whole time and working here and building this, and the whole energy of the hamlet has changed, not just because of what I've done, not because of what I've done, but I was a large part of that, but because of holding the vision and the people coming in and engaging and rebuilding themselves, rebuilding this little hamlet where my house is as well, which has been absolutely incredible to witness. And I started off by saying that the power of nature is incredible, and that we are nature ourselves, and that if we can harness that and use our creativity, our creative forces, we can make a tremendous change, tremendous healing. So all that God wants us to do actually in dealing with this darkness and dealing with the abuse is to stand in our own light of who we are, the light of who you are. Stand in that light and stand in your creativity and take one step at a time, and things will transform. And if you fall down, then it's okay. We all fall down. We can stand up again. So I just want to finally finish by saying that we have to be conscious of what the harm is that is being done at this moment, and we have to be conscious of what's happened to us in the past, and in bringing that into consciousness, then we can heal it. So, devil, I see you. Devil, I see you, and I stand within the light of God, the one true living God. I stand in my creative force as an infinite being of light on this planet at this time. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. Om Shanti.
So this week on Elders Wisdom, there's a topic that we want to cover, which is very specific to Juliet's life experience in the last few days. So it's nice to get life experience stories, isn't it, rather than information, even though we're passing it through the screen. We're passing on our own information, not that repeated or regurgitated from other sources.
That's right. So which bit of my life are we now going to talk about? So,
So tell us about your lovely experience in the last few days that's very significant to the world as it appears through the screens at the moment. How's it matched up with what the screen is showing?
are you referring to the video I've just made, which I just showed? That one. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Good evening, lovelies. Greetings from Glastonbury. So I suddenly got the inspiration. I come backwards and forwards to France all the time, and I realized that I had come back on a very significant point of time, which is the 6th, or yesterday was the 6th of August. So on the 6th of August, 1944, a terrible thing happened here in the village. And I realized that not only had it happened the 6th of August, but this is 80 years since it happened. And there was a very, very special celebration that's happening for the 8th of August. I mean, on the 6th of August, 80 years after this event. So.
And you had no idea that that was going to be taking place while you were there. Talk us through what you did, what was happening.
Well, Jack put in hours of work of putting together these video clips because I've been talking for years about the recapitulation of trauma, and that what happened here was very horrific in the Second World War. It was at the end of the war because in 1940, France was taken over by the Germans, and there was this split in the country. Part of the country decided to go along with being under the Germans and basically they, in a way, they betrayed France. They betrayed the sovereignty of France, and they went along and was under the Germans because they couldn't fight back against the Germans. I'm sure if Brigitte was here, she would give way more information than I'm giving now.
It's exactly the same as the French have had to give up their pride for the whole shenanigans in the Olympic opening ceremony.
Exactly. So it's really interesting because there were all these themes when I came here 3 weeks ago. These themes were colliding. The Olympic ceremony happened. There was all this terrible stuff about France, but as the media showed, it was just one little bit about what's happening with France and who the French people are. And it was given a terrible view of France. And there are really, really good people here in France. And I wanted to show what they'd been going through, how horrific it was for them under the Vichy government. And I was very personally touched by what happened, not because I was here, but I was only like a generation or so away from that time, because 80 years ago, in 1940, the resistance had been going for 4 years in this area, fighting back against the Nazis that totally had the control of this area. And I've talked lots to the old people here, like what was it like at that time? And it's like all the food was being taken away. They'd have to go in the dead of night, taking their nuts to the mills to be harvested for walnut oil, which they survived on. The Nazis took away all their food and so on. It was horrific. And lots of, thank you, Jack has put the link to my video. Thank you so much, Jack. So, yeah, it was a very, very hard time. And it's interesting because our allies were fighting with us here as well. So there was a prisoner of war camp in the local area, and the Nazis had captured Ukrainians, Kazakhstanians, Polish people. They were all in the prisoner of war camp. About 10 miles away from here. And the local people, lots of the local people had formed into the resistance movement, which was called the Maquis. And they were hiding out. This house is in a forest in the river valley. They were hiding out in the forest. And I was, and this house was owned by one of the men that was involved in the resistance movement, or he was a resistance sympathizer. So in August 1944, some of the resistance liberated the prisoners of war from the prisoner of war camp. Now, if you're really, this is distressing, so you can switch the sound off for a minute if you don't want to hear this, but it's in my video in the first half. So after they'd liberated the people from the prisoner of war camp, the man, Monsieur Casimir Struck, who owns this house, was up in the village on the Sunday in the cafe with lots of the men in the cafe and other members of the resistance. And the Nazis were taking retribution on them for releasing the prisoners of war, and they marched into the village. So you've got to remember, this is a very small, tiny little hamlet. When I say village, it's a little hamlet. Where I live is an even smaller hamlet. So they marched into the village, and the men in the cafe heard them coming. So that how the old man who lives up there that talked to me, he was a little boy at the time, he described to me, it's like they were two Nazi battalions were coming in a pincer movement, and the men ran out of the cafe trying to escape, and they were all shot down instantly, including Monsieur Casimir Struck, who's the father of the man that I bought the house from. And then the remainder of the people were rounded up and pushed into the hotel, and it was boarded up and set on fire. So that was the massacre that happened. Very, very tragic, and it left a deep traumatic scar on the village. And when Brigitte tuned in, after I met Brigitte and she came here and she manically tuned in, that it was just horrible. She said all that she could see rivers of blood running through this valley. It's completely horrific. So when we moved here, which was in the 90s, early 90s, so when's that? 44, 54, 64, 74, 84, 94. It was 39 years after that massacre, which is actually, in trauma terms, hardly any time at all. And this hamlet where I'm living now, where I bought the house, was totally under the control of this absolutely crazy, psychopathic National Front. I mean, they really were National Front people. And he'd got control of this house. And the old man, Monsieur Struck, who was the son of Casimir Struck, it was his father's house, and he was trying to sell it. And it was on the market for sale, but these people were in the house that he couldn't get rid of. And the deal was that they were going to take care of the house and do it up until the time he sold it. But actually, they weren't doing that. They totally wrecked the house. They allowed brambles to grow all the way around it. And every time somebody came to buy the house, they frightened them away. They were insane. We were really naive, and we bought the house, and we couldn't actually get in at that point. We had to camp outside for several weeks outside the house with our very tiny babies, trying to get in. Everybody was frightened of these guys. Monsieur Struck couldn't get them out. Eventually, the police managed to get them out, and we eventually moved in. But they had absolutely gutted the house of everything, completely. So we managed to move in, but they moved a few doors away into this old other ruin, and proceeded then for the next 8 years to completely attack us in all sorts of ways. It was quite horrific. So they were fascist. The mayor of the village was fascist. The local police were fascist, and they were all combining together to attack us and try to drive us out. So this is the energy of fascism from what had happened previously with the war, and this area was under fascist, was that, well, I use the word fascist, but National Socialism, Nazism, all these things are similar.
Trying to find one race, trying to find one group. And when you do get into groups, it's impossible for everybody to fall under the same banner unless they're forced. We've all got our own individuality that we bring to a bigger field, haven't we?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. So they were just trying to hold control here. And so that was a long thing. That after 8 years of continual brutal attack and everything destroyed, I ended up going back to England, but I didn't let go of the house. But after that, and this is how the trauma that I'm talking about in my video, the traumatic recapitulation happened. So the original trauma was the fire up in the valley, up in the little village, the burning and the massacre of those people. And if you like, you can even look further back in time and see the traumatic recapitulation from the Cathars. Because if you know the Cathar story and how they were all rounded up by the Catholic Church over a 200-year period and burnt at the stake, I mean, that was horrific. And this is in that area. This is on the edge. If you've heard of the Albigensian, I don't know what the word is. But this is, you had that burning, that horror going on, and then the same thing, the Nazis burning, and then with this house, after I left, there were several more fires. So in my little video, I then talk about the fires that happened here, how there'd already been one fire. What
does recapitulation mean? How do you define it?
Okay, so recapitulation is the traumatic energy, the energetic imprint, and I explain in the video the energetic imprint that happens from trauma, unresolved trauma. So Peter Levine was the first person that talked about this. So in his book, Wake in the Tiber, which was the book that one of the set books that you read, when you trained with me, do you remember in Wake in the Tiger?
Yes. Yeah.
I think it was in that book where he's talking about in Vietnam, the man in Vietnam. In the Vietnam War, there was an American serviceman that was attacked by the Viet Cong, and the whole battalion was completely wiped out except for him.
Wow.
Okay, so this was an incredible trauma that happened to him. He survived the war, and then he was trying to recover. But that piece about his battalion being wiped out was unconscious. He was very, very badly traumatized. So the idea, the understanding of trauma happened, first of all, by understanding what was happening to the veterans in wars. Those were the first people that were deemed to be traumatized. It's only later the understanding is extended to other types of trauma, which we explored on our training. But this particular serviceman, how he reenacted or traumatic recapitulation of that original massacre of his battalion was that every year on that date, he would go somewhere and hold up a shop. He would go and pretend he had a gun, and he would point, actually he had his hand in the pocket, he would point his 10 gun at the guy at the till in the shop and say, take all my, hand over your money. And then he would be arrested. And the police would be like, what's wrong with this guy? There's no gun or whatever. This is the third year now this has happened. So then he was referred to Bessel van der Kolk, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who's one of the pioneers of trauma healing, and he referred him to Dr. Peter Levine. Dr. Peter Levine says this is the energy, this is the unconscious energy of trauma playing out, that until we become conscious of it, it will carry on playing out. It will just repeat and repeat and repeat. Mm-hmm. And he carried on to say, Dr. Peter Levine, that traumatic recapitulation is the largest cause of suffering on this planet. Until we become conscious, we have to keep complete. We have to it will keep repeating itself. So the point of my video is to make conscious what happened in the village with the fire, and then the 3 fires that then happened at my house, because that was crazy that 3 major fires happened in my house here.
And what is it about your field that you bring to the party? Have you had fires before you got to France? Have you got a bit of that in your field as well? That you're recapitulating and you're resonating with the fire thing?
Well, I don't know. You know, that is interesting as well, because we all bring a part in there. I haven't personally been involved in a fire except for when I was a little girl, and then I was with some little friends, and I was truanting from school, and those little friends got the matches and set the heath on fire. So then the fire engines had to be called. So that was the only fire involvement I've had, but I did get a bit of a beating for that. I was 7 or something. To go back to my little video, why I showed it and to just was to show how, even though, you know, what is the healing process when you have trauma? 1 is to become conscious of it, and 2 is to repair it. So I have been working step by step to repair the damage from the fires. So it's not just to repair it, but it's like when we're traumatized, when there's trauma that we can't heal if we feel overwhelmed, it's feeling that we have some power and that we don't give up, that there is power in the situation. So I'm attempting to show in the video the power that people have had to repair their village, in re-knitting the community together, and the power I had not only in repairing the buildings, but because I didn't give up and wasn't chased away by these mad people, eventually they left, and I continued and I continued and I continued to hold this house here, and eventually we had nice neighbors move in, and together we have rebuilt this place to be a really beautiful little hamlet. And the last part of my video was to show a community celebration here in the grassy area of my hamlet. We call it the clearing that I created, which was a flat grassy area with lots of trees. And we had 80 people here with beautiful music. So does that make sense, Marion? Does that?
Yeah, it's just because it's a word we use that with when you've got a bit of trauma understanding, you kind of know what it means. But yeah, I think it's good to describe, isn't it, these terms? Because when we just say it, often there's a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation. But yeah, that was nice, that repeating. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because that recapitulation can be, like you were saying about the guy that was going and holding up the local shop. It's almost like you've got no idea where those thoughts have come from. It's on some kind of trauma cycle that, while it's outside of your consciousness, no idea it's there. And then there's a trigger, and that might be a time or a date or a time of year or some other kind of unconscious trigger that we've got that triggers us back into an old memory that's got unresolved trauma in it. And then we're stuck, aren't we, well, we're not stuck, but we can be caught in a place where we just keep using the same old habits to dig ourselves out. So then we're going to fall back in again. And it's that learning a new way to come out of it, isn't it? Learning a new way to connect with it and bring your consciousness to it and what to actually do about it. It's really quite a big, deep journey, and being speeded up all the time, I think, because it's like there's a morphic field, isn't there, of everything that has an energetic signature has a morphic field. So even using trauma work to do healing, the more we do it and the more we practice it, the bigger that field becomes, which means more and more people can naturally absorb and come into the field without it being such a battle or a feeling like you're going against everything. It becomes more absorbing, and in that clear, I think that the clearing that creates is a real, this morphogenic field thing. It becomes a really easy step. So we fall into a trauma or we fall into a traumatic response that we've been triggered into, and can much more easily sense where we're at and what the new steps are that we can create to step forward and then start building what we actually want. But we have to go through a process, don't we, of practicing what those steps might be and trying to catch different triggers to make sure that we're covering as many bases as possible to keep taking steps that are positively chosen with a clear intention.
Absolutely, because the first thing is when we have unresolved traumas that we become triggered by things and we don't realize we're being triggered. We start ranting about something, getting angry or getting withdrawn because somebody has said something or done something, and we think, oh, it's that person, you know, they're just causing problems in my life. But it's just that something that they've said has been this unresolved part of yourself. So until you realize you're being triggered and that your reaction is inappropriate to the situation, you don't do anything about it. You're just in that space of now you're in your reaction. Yeah. So the psyche is actually split. This is what happens in trauma. It's like a terrible thing happens. It's overwhelming and impossible to deal with. So we split it off and we put it away. And we don't know it's there until there's a trigger, and then it rears its head. And then we're in the middle of it, but we don't see that it's something separate and inappropriate until we reintegrate it. And this is the field you're talking about, is we bring it back together. We're reintegrating. Healing is about bringing and making whole again, bringing back together the parts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing consciousness and bringing the parts back. So this all links in really with what's going on at the moment, which is the mind control.
Yeah.
And what we're continually being triggered. Humanity is massively traumatized, collectively, generationally traumatized.
And they're managing it, aren't they, with the chaos, this constant chaos is just holding as much of ourselves scattered, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's done deliberately. I mean, this is the thing. It's like I spent years thinking, oh, trauma was just unfortunate and if only we would heal. Yeah, and it was all about finding ways to help people heal. But now what I've studied is that they are deliberately using mind control techniques to traumatize us and to keep us in a state of fear. And this is the other element of this video, is like, why did I want to talk about this now? Is because in this last week or so, we've had all sorts of horrific things happening in England, in the UK. We started talking about, riots that's been happening in Britain, stabbings and so on. It's like, how much is that actually real?
Well, that was what we said, wasn't it? So I stepped out of Liverpool Street Station with this imagined idea in my head that there was going to be riots on the streets. It was going to be a Holocaust apocalyptic exit out of the station. You know, the way your imagination can conjure up all these awful images. And I got off the train just after midnight on a Friday night at Liverpool Street, and it was party central, and everyone was in a great mood. And I was looking all vulnerable with my white stick, and got loads of really lovely support and lovely people wanting to talk to me on a Friday night. Bum Girl was really pissed up with a can in one hand and a fag in the other, and she was lovely. We had a lovely little chat. So this apocalypse that I had in my imagination as we're coming out of the airport, and then I arrive, and it was lovely. It was like going to a rave or something. That was my life experience in central London.
Yeah, people are fundamentally good, and we all want the same things. Mm-hmm. And we only start doing bad things when we're activated into extreme fear. So the deep state or the mainstream or whatever whatever terminology, there's somebody, we've talked about it lots of times, there's somebody behind the politicians, and the politicians are the puppets, and there's somebody behind the people that's behind the people that are deliberately, and this is what I call evil, deliberately creating chaos and fear amongst the human population for whatever reasons, to control, whether it's
to control everything. We're slaves. We're here to give our energy. That's how they can put money as a value on things. It's the amount of energy humanity puts into work, is what they've given money as a measuring tool for. And
Yeah.
so our enslavement to be just doing whatever at the cheapest possible price. So they flood the cities with cheap labor and get as much cheapness as they can. And then there's just this, it's all to run corporations. Every politician is controlled by corporations. Every bit of the government, every bit of everything is controlled by corporations, which are dead entities.
Absolutely.
Everything.
Absolutely. So at the highest level, we don't know who's behind it. Could be extraterrestrial, it could be whatever. But, you know, this is definitely happening. And it's rolled out by people like our now Prime Minister, who put out this awful video, which I can't even bear to watch. It was a bit like our friend Boris was there with his three-pronged face, you know, these terms that are mind control terms. It's all set up to mind control you.
Yeah.
About deeply fearful things. The whole stage is set up with flags and whatever. The same as Biden when he...
Yeah, keep the division going, keep the division going. That's all they do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, they're deliberately creating trauma. They're deliberately keeping people fragmented and in a state of fear with what they're pushing out with the media, which is why you and I had that television smashing contest back a couple of years, didn't we?
Very good.
Yeah, just stop watching the telly because they are mind controlling us, but they mind control us through absolutely everything.
Media is the biggest one, isn't it? It's like anything that's coming out of a speaker, off a page, from a screen, isn't raw reality. It isn't the felt body sense of reality around me, but it can create so much, both positive and negative. It's in the hands of those who just wish to enslave and control and have no need to look after us, feed us on bugs, leave us in a shitty little cell.
But they're pushing, and our present Prime Minister is very much a globalist puppet, and this is like we're just being streamlined ahead towards this 20.
He was in a march that had violence, wasn't he? 20 years ago or something. He was marching and there was violence, and now he's got this rule. Okay, the new rule is nobody's allowed to march anymore. Basically, I did it 20 years ago. Look at me, a hero. Now no one's allowed to do it.
Anyway, it's all part of a plan. So the plan is problem, reaction, solution. So now the problem, the riots on the streets, which are being stirred up and maybe not even real, so that they can bring in the surveillance. So in order to stay integrated, to stay whole, to stay healthy, we have to not allow ourselves to be triggered and to stick together.
Yeah. When you see those fights, you can never see more than 100 or a couple of hundred people, I imagine. But when you look at those last year and the year, well, even this year, when there's been marches on the streets of London where there's like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people, all peaceful. That's when I see those little mobs, it's just set up and staged, isn't it? And there are enough angry people to take part in stuff like that, especially young men. But why wouldn't you be? You know, people are the ones who are being completely done over. Every one of us, even the hooligans, their society is just worthless to them. Nobody's got any benefit out of life. It's an awful situation that we're all in as humanity. And there's the corporations pulling all the bloody strings still.
Absolutely, and we have to find a way through it, which is in my video why I said step by step. We don't have the whole solution, but just stay focused, stay in alignment, and step by step, you know, work towards staying in the light, goodness and wholeness, and the next step. So I just wanted to refer to what you said about those little mobs, because I was watching this other amazing guy that was interviewed by Mark Atwood, Ola, and then Damn something. Facebook bans him all the time, but he's got an amazing website. And I just watched his whole analysis of what happened with Trump, and it's so staggering when you watch all the parts that are put together to make something appear real that's absolutely not. And one of the things is that they set up these kind of shootings and false flags and riots and that all the time. And there's a company, there's lots of companies actually, called Rent a Crowd. So, you know, whoever wants to stage a false flag, and it's advertised to governments and that, if you want to do your false flag event, you can hire Rent a Crowd. And they've got pretend corpses and amputees and all sorts of things. And they can put it all together to look very realistic, as quick as a flash. And even somebody in the public eye like Trump, the whole world is looking at, we're all fooled by a fake shooting. So, you know, don't trust anything that comes through the media. Just don't trust it.
No. And it's really difficult because it's where we've been trained to receive our news and information, isn't it? So it's really hard to remember to just, it's media, it's a media production.
Yeah, totally.
We're all that. What's that Jim Carrey character in that film about his life? And he's the only one who doesn't know it's a movie. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that.
It's very interesting. I can't remember. Somebody in the chat will say what it's called.
Yeah, somebody in the chat. So should we read everybody's chat first? Okay, so we'll zoom through this. So Jack very kindly is back here. Big thanks to Jack for his amazing editing skills. He says good evening. He also says follow the Elders' Wisdom TikTok channel and the YouTube channel. Debbie says, I wrote that I could see you on Facebook, and another comment, but it seems as if you couldn't see them, but I think you'll be able to see this one. Yeah, there seems to be something keeps changing on my Facebook that gives read-only permission, which is very annoying. Anyway, thank you, Debbie. So Carol says, I was commenting on your last live. Thank you, Carol. So Carol says, hi, babies. It's like 2 dimensions. So she's existing and coexisting. Are you referring to what's happening with what's going on at the moment? Because it is absolutely crazy. Marianne says, I have to... Yeah, go on. What are you saying, Marianne?
The screen and the papers, they're 2-dimensional, aren't they?
Yeah. It is absolutely crazy. Marianne says, I have to sign off soon, but we'll watch the recording later. So glad to have happened upon your live and grateful as this subject is so important. I love that you persevered and healed your house. Thank you. Bless you, Marianne. Jack says, so the globalists start by killing a few kids, then brand anyone who's not absolutely ecstatic about it as far right. Then bring in draconian methods to clamp down on this. Imaginary far right along with everyone else. Sounds like a great plan if you're a despot who wants to rule the world like Klaus Schwab. What did we say, Marion, about that terminology, far right?
Far right. Well, it's just usually they're referring to ordinary people who just want to be left the fuck alone. Stop being told what they can and can't do, because most people are good people and wouldn't harm anybody anyway. So we should just be allowed to live, getting on with that, being all right people without being called far right. We're just all right. We're all right.
All right.
It's
a control mechanism to give people that label, far right.
Theorist or tinfoil hat wearer, loyal to the foil. Call me a racist. I don't care. Call me what you like. I don't care. I know what I want and I know what I value. And
yeah, Carol says they did this in Canada as well. Absolutely. And now they've, in Ireland, at least, I think maybe in the UK as well, I don't know, they've got this hate speech thing that if you comment on what's going on, then the police can come and enforce, lock you up. I saw something happen the other day. Police arrested, I didn't personally see it, I saw a video. Somebody was arrested for what he'd put on Facebook. He'd committed a Facebook crime. The thought police are out. We're only a little step away from this happening, and don't play into the hands. It's all right to stand up for your values and speak of your values. Don't go,
We have to, the thing is, we have to be able to do it in groups and communities. And that's where the problem is, because the easy way to divide us because we're all so fucking traumatized is stopping that unity from happening, isn't it? That's why this is so important, what we're talking about, because this recapitulation just means we keep trying to use the same old coping strategies to get through, and they don't work. We have to drop the old and carry on with intention to build what we do want. We have to stop just being chased by the big bad wolf. We have to actually choose the direction that we're going to go in and start making it happen.
Yeah, and we absolutely have to work on our own healing to bring more and more consciousness in, so that we bring more consciousness in, so that we're not reactive.
Yeah, because that's the recapitulation, isn't it? It's a reaction, recapitulate. The same stuff's keep going to happen. It's the same lesson until you learn it. It's going to keep happening.
Absolutely. So Jack says hate speech is any speech that they don't like.
Yeah.
Any speech that they hate. So it's interesting because the day after this, back up in the village, there was a huge ceremony again, that was yesterday I attended. And I was invited to go up, and there were representatives there from Kazakhstan and Poland and so on, and they laid piles and piles of wreaths on the memorial, and at the place, the hotel where it is just the, you can see in the first video, earlier in the video, the foundations of that hotel, they laid them there. And a woman came up to me and said, hello, are you Juliet? And it was the sister of Mishra Struck, Regina Struck, that I hadn't seen for about 30 years.
Mm.
And she said, I was so emotional to come here today, especially when, and I'm going to cry now, especially when they read out the name of my grandfather that was murdered here.
Oh.
Yeah. So very powerful people coming together and witnessing and sharing their pain and, you know, stepping forward into the light again. You know, that's all it's required is for us to stand in our light and not to be dehumanized and so on by what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They will never win. They will never, ever win. No matter what they do, they won't win. We just need to remember to stay in our light. One step at a time. We only need to do one thing at a time. So there's a few more comments. Should I share those?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Carol says they wish to devalue working people so they are derided and don't have a voice. They did this with the truckers in Canada, grounded, hard-working, valuable people who are branded as far right or fascist, to take away their validity and their voice. The powers fear the working man and the working woman. They fear true humans. They fear humans that are in their power, basically. And that's why they want to traumatize us. Carol also says, so happy to hear about the beautiful ceremony. What a transformation. So it's very interesting. So Carol is another lovely, very long-term friend of mine that I met because of Le Groupier. Very long time ago, she found a leaflet that I'd made of my project here. She found it in England, and then she tried to track me down, but I'd already returned to England. But Carol, you came here, didn't you? So you were here just after I left, so she knows what it was like when I left, where it was falling into ruin from all the attacks and everything. And Jack says, here's the link to the original video. And Jack worked really hard in the audio. Carol says, so inspiring. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you for all the time you stood beside me. You and Brigitte. Brigitte was a major help to me here, and to my other loyal friend. So good friends standing together, so important.
Yes.
Yeah. So our connections with our loved ones, so important. So don't let anybody come between you and your loved ones.
It's our own behaviour, isn't it? Our own behaviours and our beliefs and our unresolved crap is what breaks up relationships.
Yeah. The distortions that come in. So we've got a few minutes left, 4 minutes left. Does anybody else want to share anything? You want to share anything about what you're going through, Marion, at the moment? Because you're in London. It's like,
I'm in London and but I'm on Hampstead Heath dog sitting for a week. So it's very refreshing to be in London and be here because it's you're like in the middle of the park. I can hear park sounds. You don't hear any siren. Well, occasionally there'll be a siren. So it's nice and refreshing change because my flat is city central. This is park central. Yeah. So it's very refreshing. And I'm looking after some little doggies. They're both sleeping. And it's nice to just have that access to nature that you were talking about through the animals as well as where I am on the heath, to be able to commune with nature and just to be surrounded by it. It's really nourishing.
deeply restorative, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Deeply, deeply restorative. And that's what our nervous system responds so positively to those natural sounds and the natural environment. I want to say a thank you as well, an acknowledgement to somebody called Rose Temple Morris. It's the Lion's Gate tomorrow, Carol says. 8, perfect portal for the healing ceremony. Yeah.
Oh, yes, we started the Bison Magic YouTube channel. So find Bison Magic. So it's the building of the drum. And then a bit about Brigitte building her drum as well at the end.
So you've put that up on there, have you? Or
A couple of videos up there. I've got one that's gone in slow-mo. I'm trying to undo it, but I have to wait for my friend to come and help me because I can't work out how to do that anymore.
It's very hard with your vision not to be able to see.
Yeah.
Send us the link and we can put it underneath this video for the Bison channel.
Bison Magic.
Bison Magic.
Yeah, we decided not to use the word medicine because it can be so easily caught by the filters. Or the algorithms. So yeah, we're calling it Bison Magic.
Yeah, okay. Send us the link and put under here. So I also wanted to give a credit and a thanks to a Facebook friend. I haven't actually met her, but her name is Rose Temple Morris, and she's given me the picture that she created, a beautiful picture of which I'm making a stained glass window. So I don't know, it's in the video, but I don't know if I included it in my story. There's a part in the middle of this house that was completely walled in, that we took a wall down and we found a gun holster there, and we think that was probably where people were hiding out against the Nazis. So I'm turning that space, that room, into a little temple space and putting that beautiful stained glass window there, which is roses, and there's a dove rising up out of the roses with this beautiful light.
Lovely.
So I'm part of the way through doing that. And
is Richard doing it?
Richard's doing it. Yeah, Richard's doing the same. So that he's doing that for me in return for the trauma training that you did.
Nice.
So doing exchanges, even if they take our money away, we can always barter exchange and so on. But don't let them take your cash. We can always exchange lots of things.
Yes. It's just a measure of wealth and value. It's not the value itself, the money. It's just a measure of wealth and value.
Yeah.
Not the substance of it.
Yeah. So remember, we're powerful and we're creative. And as long as we're creative, we always find a way through anything. Whatever is thrown at us, we'll find a way through it.
Mm-hmm. So the setting of intentions are so important, because otherwise we are just being chased away by life, trying to run away from the dramas we don't like. But actually, unless we form a really clear intent where we want to go, put your stake in the ground and move towards it, we are just scattered and unconsciously running away all the time from the boogeyman. So it is about just knowing that when we get chased by the boogeyman, and even if we get triggered, we can get through that quite quickly and much more easily if we know what it is we do want, what it is we do want, what is it we do want. And that one, what it is we do want is a feeling as well. It's not about goods or services or appearance or any possession. It's actually about what do you want to feel like? What's the feelings that you want to be able to live in? Because at the moment, this idea of chaos is everywhere and the fear is everywhere. But actually, when you just step in and just enjoy life, what is it that that's bringing for you? What are the emotions and the feelings that you're having while you're enjoying it? And how can we magnify those and make more of those feelings happen? That's what we need to do more of, all of us.
Yeah, be in our joy, be in our, yeah.
And practice it. You have to practice it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Very much so. Okay, it's time to leave. Thank you so much for bearing with me. Do check out the actual video, which is on YouTube, and check us out on TikTok and Rumble and our YouTube channel, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're everywhere. We try to spread it everywhere, and do share if to inspire people, and yeah, because that's our intention, is to help and inspire. And big love to you both, says Jack, and Carol says, love you guys. Okay, loads of love, Carol. I still have to give you a call. I'm so sorry I haven't rung you yet. I've been a bit full on making videos. Okay, we'll catch up soon. Lots of love.
Bye.
Lots of love. Bye-bye. Thank you so much, Marion.
Thank you.
Here with me, holding my hand. Bye for now.